Time for another Warriors Revisited. Like with all my reviews, this will be very spoilers heavy, but I assume most of you have already read the first series, at least. Right off the bat, this book is far more fast-paced than the last. It starts right where Into the Wild left off, Fireheart and Graystripe's vigil. There are several plots, and the writers managed to balance it all out pretty well. For the most part, I can say that the plot and character development are tied neatly, and the cause and effect of the events leading up to the climax is very satisfying. WindClan's Return. Even more so than in the first book, everything with Tigerclaw is only a subplot. The only thing that changes is that Fireheart becomes even more sure of his guilt. The main storyline is about WindClan's return and how it impacts the rest of the clans. The journey at the start is kept to a brief and entertaining adventure, which establishes the friendship between Graystripe and Fireheart, as well as introduces the reader to the exiled clan. I was surprised to find just how brief the exchanges between Fireheart and the WindClan cats were on the journey. The most developed relationship is between him and One Whisker, and even that is limited to scenes after WindClan has returned. All the dialogue is very direct and objective, so there isn't much room for getting to know the characters as people. It is all very robotic, but the Aaron's expertise at writing events and atmosphere help make the experience interesting enough. The major issue I have with this part of the book is that it doesn't take advantage of the time to set up what's going to happen later. It's largely a drabble that's only there because we need WindClan to come back. If you remove the sequence and just summarized it with WindClan got saved, you'd lose nothing. They could have better established Graystripe and Fireheart's friendship, or caught Tallstar up on clan politics. Instead, it's just sort of a filler. The real treat for me is the conflicts that arise from their return, from the border fight with RiverClan to the four clans fighting at the climax, as well as the build-up to it. Each of the clans had valid reasons to go to war, even if ShadowClan's wasn't entirely well explained, making it a fight of loyalty rather than good versus evil. Broken Star and the Rogues is surprisingly not the name of a Warriors-inspired rock band, but it is instead a rather interesting subplot. Though Broken Star isn't much further developed in this book, his actions paint him as a clever and still formidable opponent. He didn't show up till near the end, but his actions in the background nearly caused another battle between ShadowClan and ThunderClan. And again, it's surprisingly not Fireheart who defeats him, though they did scuffle for a brief moment. We learned that Yellowfang is Broken Star's mother, which, despite already knowing this, I found really came out of nowhere. I'm not sure why this is, as there are plenty of hints in the first book, from Yellowfang hating Kits to her being shocked at the fact Broken Star killed Ragged Star. Maybe that's just because we were never shown any instance for why Yellowfang being Ragged Star's mate was relevant. In other words, it seemed a bit disconnected from the rest of the story. It's never related to Graystripe's situation, and her being Broken Star's mother doesn't really explain the motivations or actions of either of them. For example, Blue Star's story, revealed in the next book, explains everything Blue Star has sacrificed in order to become leader, as well as creates a feeling of loss for the character that would contribute to her eventual downfall. Graystripe and Silverstream. Graystripe is actually pretty awful in this book. It came as a huge shock to me when I saw him abandon his friend for a she-cat he'd only spoken to for a moment. Though the dialogue between him and Silverstream is charming, it far from justifies their relationship, especially so soon after Graystripe accidentally causes the death of Whiteclaw. And knowing about the rising tensions between his clan and RiverClan, any cat with sense would have stayed as far from Silverstream as possible. This wouldn't be such an issue, since they're only together briefly in this book, but the fact that they're having a relationship has a huge effect on both Graystripe and Fireheart's decision in this book. Graystripe and Fireheart's relationship is badly strained because Fireheart believes that his friend's relationship will cause him to be disloyal. He tries to talk his friend out of it, but Graystripe not only acts like a terrible jerk, but neglects his clan responsibilities. Just before Cinderpaw is run over on the Thunderpath, Fireheart is called out to look for Catmint. At the same time Tigerclaw has set his trap on the Thunder Path, there are few warriors in camp, and Bluestar is still ill. Fireheart tries to find Graystripe, but he's gone, causing the very bored Cinderpaw to run off and get run over. If Graystripe was at camp, he could have either taken Cinderpaw and Brackenpaw out, distracted them, watched them at camp, or gone to the Thunder Path and, being a more experienced warrior, not get run over. Instead, he barely shows remorse for not being there in the clan crisis, and continues to neglect Brackenpaw's training. On top of that, Graystripe is extremely aggressive in his retaliation of his friend's complaints, going as far as to start a physical fight with him. He also multiple times attacks Fireheart verbally, all for a cat he talked to for a minute. What's worse is, at the end, Graystripe never really experiences any consequences. He simply realizes the possibility of negative situations he might be put into, but never actually experiences such situations. Of course he does in the next book, but that doesn't really account for all his unpunished terrible behavior in this one. I'm just going to read an excerpt from the book just to make my point. "Hey, Graystripe," Fireheart called. Graystripe carried on with his work. Fireheart bounded over to him. "Do you want to go hunting this morning?" Graystripe turned to face him, his eyes cold. "Are you making sure I don't disappear again?" he snarled. Fireheart was startled. "No, I just thought, after yesterday, Clawface, I would have done the same thing for any ThunderClan cat. That's what clan loyalty is about." Graystripe's meow was harsh with anger as he went back to pushing snow. Fireheart's hopes plummeted. Had he lost his friend's trust forever? He turned away, tail down, and began to trudge through the snow towards the camp entrance. He called over his shoulder. "Bluestar told me to go hunting with you this morning, actually, so you can explain to her why you're not coming." "Oh, I see, you were just trying to please Bluestar, as usual," Graystripe hissed. Fireheart stopped and whipped around, ready to throw back a retort, but he paused when he saw Graystripe was crossing the clearing toward him, shaking snowflakes from his wide shoulders. "Graystripe, obeying your leader is part of the warrior code, which has to do with loyalty." Ugh. In the climactic battle, he's distanced from Fireheart and Silverstream, instead of being put into a situation where he must choose between his clanmate and mate. The Errants played it far too safe, and never even made Graystripe apologize for his arrogant behavior towards his best friend. Instead, Fireheart is the one who has to back down and respect his friend's decision. I understand that they wanted to extend this conflict to the next book, and that's fine. I'm not saying the concept of the conflict isn't intriguing, but the romance needed to be handled a lot better. Even if the romance remained unchanged, the Errants could have written it more so Graystripe's relationship was an act of rebellion, have him feel isolated in his clan, and stressed over the death of Whiteclaw, and the rising tensions between the clans, taking Silverstream as a mate as a way of feeling beyond the endless squabbles between the clans by making peace with a supposed enemy. Speaking of which, that's very much like the relationship between Fireheart and Princess. The plot between the clans and Princess, as well as how it leads to the character growth from Fireheart, is weaved beautifully. As said above, Fireheart feels alone in the clan, still ostracized by his clanmates, and having no one he can connect to after losing touch with Graystripe. He tends to drift to the Tulip place whenever he's feeling particularly stressed or alone. There, he has a cat who accepts and understands him, and more than that, loves him, something he can't experience with the clans, though he prefers their lifestyle. Princess herself is an adorable character. Though it might be old-fashioned, there's something about female characters in traditionally feminine roles that I really like. There's a blissful charm and innocence to them, and they're just friendly, honest, and dependable characters, without the need to inject all the annoying sass that's such a common trope among female characters nowadays. When Princess gives him Cloud Kit, I found myself smiling and letting out a sigh of relief after everything Fireheart previously faced. He doesn't do much in the book except be cute, but it's a fine introduction nevertheless. What confused me was some of the backlash his arrival brought. Of course, I'd imagine some of the clan wouldn't be pleased to see him, but there seemed to be an odd fixation with his pelt color. Both Fireheart and his clanmates mentioned that Cloudkit's white pelt would make him stick out, but Whitestorm has the exact same pelt color. Bullying is bullying, but they should at least be a little more logical about it. Fireheart also has a very odd conclusion when Cloudkit goes hunting in the snow, that he'll never fit in the clan because he didn't understand that young kits weren't allowed to do that. This is very ridiculous, especially seeing that Cinderpaw was similarly disobedient, as well as the vast majority of kits. Wanting to be a warrior early is something every kit wants to do. It's kitty pets that are disinterested in venturing outside. Dustpaw the Rude. Speaking of bullying, Dustpaw got really tiring in this book. In the first book, his teasing of Firepaw was kept at a minimum, and was justified since Firepaw was the newcomer. In this book, even after Fireheart becomes a warrior and recruits Sandpaw to his side, he continues on, and his insults become far more frequent in this book. By the end, I wanted to slap him. Even after Fireheart suggested that Dustpaw and Sandpaw be made warriors, he still gives him the death glare. Exposition. The first few chapters have incredibly heavy exposition. Almost everything in the first book is recapped in detail, and one sentence is even repeated, almost word for word. First, it's Fireheart answered reluctantly, meeting her stern expression as boldly as he dared. That Tigerclaw killed Redtail in the battle with RiverClan. Redtail had been the ThunderClan deputy before Lionheart. Fireheart had never met him, but he knew Redtail had been deeply respected by all the clan. And later, "But I'm not trying to make accusations against Redtail," Fireheart protested. "It's Tigerclaw who's the problem." Redtail had been made the ThunderClan deputy before Tigerclaw. Fireheart had never met him, but he knew Redtail had been deeply respected by all the clan. Near the end, there's also a very sloppy reference to the fact Bluestar has had kits that makes no sense out of context. Aside from this instance, the fact that she has kits is never referenced in this book. In the first book, it's only mentioned by an elder that she had some once, so any readers that remember this fact will only assume it's in reference to her dead kits, not that they're still alive, which is relevant to this particular book. Fireheart and Sandstorm, the second rushed romance in this book. It can be argued that they don't become mates until much later in the books, but their relationship at the end of this book is exactly the same as it is then. After Fireheart saves her, she immediately softens up, and all her hatred towards him disappears. I found this to be extremely out of character. It is possible that what she becomes by the end is closer to how she behaves normally with her clanmates, but we've only ever seen Sandpaw as an arrogant and sassy character, so it really comes out of nowhere. I would have imagined her wanting to retaliate against Fireheart, and have her dislike towards him grow stronger due to the embarrassment of being saved by him. As it is, her almost instantaneous personality flip is very jarring. Spotted Leaf pandering. Well, Spotted Leaf is back. She only appears in one scene, but she's mentioned half a dozen other times throughout this book, mostly exposition about her being dead. What really got me mad, though, is how Yellowfang wonders if Spotted Leaf would have been able to save Cinderpaw and the cats dying of green cough. This is not only an out-of-character thought, but one that is completely ludicrous. Yellowfang is an older and far more experienced medicine cat, and is far too prideful for such pessimism. When she does appear, she surprisingly delivers a pretty good prophecy. The first omen of this book, the one about unnecessary death, I found pointless. With or without it, no events would have been changed. With Spotted Leaf's prophecy, though, Fireheart still didn't manage to make changes. His misinterpretation about its meaning caused him to doubt Graystripe rather than Tigerclaw, which would have been very clever if Graystripe's part of the plot hadn't been handled so poorly. Trivia. At the beginning of this book, Mousefur and Longtail are mentioned sharing prey together, an accidental early hint at their later warm companionship. The herb catmint is called catnip in this book. Yellowfang mentions that she hasn't used it in a long time, which is strange since it would either mean Shadow Clan cats rarely get green cough, or the herb is non-existent on the other side of the Thunder Path. When Cloudkit is named by Bluestar, it is asked if he'll have a naming ceremony. Kits have never been shown to have such ceremonies in any other book. Medicine Cats visiting the Moonstone is still never mentioned. Neither are Medicine Cat apprentices, though Cinderpaw is starting to act as the Yellowfang's helper. Spoilers for Bluestar's prophecy. Sunstar had 8 lives because of Pinestar. Why didn't the other clans know that Nightstar hadn't gotten his lives, since Brokenstar was still alive?